A serious dispute is brewing on the US-Canada border, threatening a long-standing economic partnership. It began with heated rhetoric from former President Donald Trump, prompting a swift response from British Columbia. The province announced new tolls on American goods traveling through its territory to Alaska, escalating trade tensions. Alaska, separated from the rest of the US, relies on land routes through Canada, making British Columbia's move a powerful counter to US trade policies. This raises questions about the future of cross-border cooperation and highlights the vulnerability of deeply intertwined economies. The dispute is no longer regional. It's a national issue with international implications. Even regional governments can wield significant power in international affairs. The proposed tolls could dramatically increase shipping costs to Alaska, affecting businesses and daily life. The stage is set for a potential trade war with damaging consequences for both nations. The world is watching. Will this be a brief skirmish or the start of a more confrontational era in US-Canada relations? Leaders in Washington and Ottawa must navigate this situation with care. A peaceful, mutually beneficial resolution is crucial. Protecting one of the world's most successful economic relationships is at stake. The US and Canada share more than just a border. They share a deep economic interdependence. For decades, they've been each other's largest trading partners, with billions in goods and services crossing daily. This commerce supports millions of jobs and is built on trust and cooperation. Landmark trade deals like NAFTA and the USMCA have created a seamless North American market. Integrated supply chains mean a single product might cross the border multiple times during production. This integration boosts global competitiveness, but also creates vulnerabilities. The Alaska Highway, running through British Columbia and the Yukon, is a critical artery for U.S. access to Alaska. Any threat to this route, like the new tolls, exposes a key pressure point in the relationship. The current dispute tests a partnership built over generations. Past disagreements, like those over softwood lumber, were usually resolved through negotiation. This time, the conflict feels more confrontational and threatens the foundation of trust. Both sides are reminded of how much they stand to lose. The stakes are higher than ever. The future of North American trade hangs in the balance. British Columbia has announced new tolls on all U.S. commercial traffic using its highways to Alaska. The Premier frames this as a defensive measure against U.S. economic pressure. The toll targets every truck carrying goods to or from Alaska, enforced at key border crossings. The province argues it's only fair. If the U.S. imposes costs on Canadian goods, Canada can charge for use of its infrastructure. This transforms a transportation route into a tool of economic leverage. The decision has shocked the North American logistics industry, forcing companies to reconsider their business models. Options are limited: absorb the cost, pass it to Alaskan consumers, or seek expensive alternative routes. The political message is clear. British Columbia is willing to act decisively, even at the risk of friction with the U.S. Some Canadians support the move, feeling their country is often taken for granted. It's a bold gamble. The province hopes the economic pain will force the U.S. back to the negotiating table. The outcome is uncertain. The stakes are high for both sides. The next moves will determine the future of this vital trade route. British Columbia's toll announcement is already causing economic disruption. Even before collection begins, uncertainty is chilling trade. Shipping costs for essentials to Alaska are projected to rise sharply, hitting residents and businesses. The impact extends to Washington and the Pacific Northwest, which rely on the land route for efficient trade. Reduced trade volumes could mean hardship for communities on both sides of the border. The ripple effects show how a single policy can disrupt an integrated economy. On the Canadian side, the tolls risk provoking U.S. retaliation, threatening British Columbia's export-driven economy. Industries like forestry, mining, and tourism could become targets in a tit-for-tat trade war. The Alaska Trucking Association warns the tolls would devastate the industry and state economy. Retailers predict higher prices and possible shortages for consumers. The dispute is no longer abstract. It's a real economic crisis for ordinary people. The stakes are immediate and personal. Former President Trump has responded to British Columbia's move with forceful rhetoric. He's accused Canada of extortion and threatened massive reciprocal actions if the tolls aren't withdrawn. Trump's threats include new tariffs on Canadian exports like autos and steel, aiming to pressure Ottawa to intervene. This has turned a regional trade issue into a global headline. The strategy is to escalate the conflict for a swift surrender, playing well with Trump's political base. But this approach risks alienating a key ally and destabilizing a trillion-dollar trading relationship. Foreign policy experts warn that such confrontation could cause long-term damage, regardless of the dispute's outcome. Trump's statements, while influential, are not official U.S. policy, adding confusion and volatility. The Canadian government faces a dilemma: respond to a former president or wait for the current administration's stance. Trump's intervention has injected political drama and uncertainty into an already tense standoff. The situation is more complex than ever. The path forward is unclear. The world is watching closely. Trade experts and diplomats are urging caution as tensions rise. They warn that a U.S.-Canada trade war would be disastrous for both economies. Mary Scott of the Peterson Institute notes that imposing costs on Canada often hurts American businesses and consumers, especially Alaskans. Experts highlight that the USMCA provides mechanisms for resolving disputes. These should be used before resorting to tariffs and tolls. Former Canadian Ambassador David McNaughton advocates for quiet, back-channel diplomacy over public threats. Some analysts question the legality of British Columbia's toll, suggesting it could violate international trade law and the USMCA. This legal vulnerability could open the door to a negotiated settlement. The U.S. could launch a formal trade challenge, moving the conflict into a structured legal process. Most experts agree. De-escalation is essential, and the economic stakes are too high for a full-blown trade war. Professor Gordon Giffen warns both sides are playing with fire. Cooler heads must prevail. Leaders need to focus on practical solutions, not political points. The time for statesmanship is now. The conflict is now a high-stakes game of strategic chess. British Columbia's toll puts direct pressure on Alaska, hoping to force the U.S. to back down without widespread damage. The U.S. could retaliate with tariffs on Canadian industries, but this risks harming its own economy. A more measured response would be a legal challenge under the USMCA, shifting the conflict to arbitration and buying time for diplomacy. Canada's federal government faces a tough choice: support British Columbia or intervene and risk backlash at home. Ottawa's decision will be critical, balancing sovereignty with the need to preserve economic ties. Each move carries significant risks and rewards. The situation could escalate or de-escalate quickly, depending on the choices made. The next steps will shape the future of U.S.-Canada relations. Both sides must weigh their options carefully. The stakes are national and international. The world is watching for the next move. The outcome is far from certain. Resolving this standoff will require skilled diplomacy and compromise. The best path is a diplomatic off-ramp, an agreement that lets both sides claim victory and de-escalate. Leaders must lower the rhetoric and engage in quiet, constructive dialogue. One solution: British Columbia could suspend the tolls in exchange for U.S. negotiations on broader trade issues. Another option: replace the targeted toll with a general highway fee for all commercial traffic, reducing political tension. These steps would create space for a permanent solution and show goodwill. The ultimate goal is reaffirming USMCA principles and returning to free trade. Both sides could issue a joint statement, withdraw threats, and reset the relationship. Achieving this will require strong leadership and a focus on shared prosperity. The process won't be easy, but the alternative is far worse. The time to act is now. The dispute over British Columbia's tolls is a stark reminder of the fragility of international partnerships. Decades of cooperation can be threatened by political rhetoric and retaliation. The U.S. and Canada's peaceful, prosperous relationship now faces a critical test. If the conflict escalates, the economic damage could be immense, disrupting supply chains, raising prices, and destroying jobs. Even a resolution may leave lasting scars, eroding trust and prompting both countries to seek less efficient, more resilient trade options. This is a test of leadership and statesmanship. The path forward demands negotiation, not brinkmanship. The USMCA provides tools for peaceful resolution if leaders have the will to use them. The world is watching to see if this partnership can weather the storm. For businesses and citizens who rely on cross-border trade, the stakes are personal and immediate. The need for cooperation and mutual respect has never been greater. The future of North American trade depends on it.